Summoning. I never meant to invite anything. I thought I was only watching, only curious, only brushing up against something older than language itself. But the truth is, I opened a door. And once a door like that is open, you cannot choose what steps through. The night it began was thick with the kind of silence that makes your bones ache. Even the crickets had fallen quiet, as though some larger presence hushed them into obedience. My rented farmhouse stood at the edge of the marsh, its wooden beams sagging beneath centuries of weather and neglect. Inside, the air smelled of dust and damp hay, as if the earth itself had been inhaling through the cracks and rotting the bones of the house from within. Candles were all I had for light, their flames quivering in the stale air, as if already frightened of what I had not yet done. The wax dripped slowly, gathering into pale, hardened veins that clung to the rusted tin holders. I had found the ritual scratched into the back of an old journal I bought from a second-hand shop. Most of the words were faded, but what remained felt urgent, carved deep as if the writer's hand had been forced. I didn't believe it, not at first. Rituals and summoning circles, those belonged in whispered folklore, not in a room with creaking floorboards and a ceiling that sagged low enough to brush with your fingertips. Yet something in me wanted to test it, to taste the edge of the unknown like a tongue pressed against the blade of a knife. The floor beneath my knees was cold, the wood splintered and swollen from decades of moisture. My chalk lines were uneven, the circle trembling under my unsure hand. Symbols bled outward like veins, crooked, imperfect, yet still alive in some way I could not explain. When I lit the last candle, I swore the shadows thickened, clinging more heavily to the corners of the room, as though watching. The silence grew heavier. It pressed into my chest until I could hear nothing but my own heartbeat. Then came a sound, the faintest whisper, like a moth's wings brushing across glass. I froze, candlelight dancing across my hands. The air shifted. It smelled suddenly of iron and rain-soaked earth, sharp and metallic, as though blood had been spilled on the floor long ago and only now remembered itself. I closed my eyes, telling myself it was nothing. But in the dark, I felt something stir against my skin, a pressure that had no body, no weight, but pressed against me all the same. The whisper grew louder, though I could not make out words. It wasn't language, at least not in any human sense. It was older, drawn out, like the groan of wood bending beneath invisible strain. The candles guttered, their flames bending inward, drawn toward the circle I had scrawled. The chalk lines began to crack, as though the wood beneath them were shifting, pushing back, trying to erase what I had written. I reached to steady one of the candles, and the floor beneath me trembled. Not an earthquake, not the house settling, something deeper, something breathing beneath the boards. The smell worsened, now rot mingled with the metallic tang, like wet soil clotted with decay. I opened my eyes, and the room no longer looked the same. The beams overhead seemed to stretch, elongated shadows crawling along them like veins across pale skin. The walls rippled faintly, as if a skin of water had been pulled over them, trembling with each flicker of flame. I wanted to stand, to scatter the candles, to leave the circle broken. But I couldn't move. My body felt pinned by invisible hands pressing me to the cold floor. My breath came in short bursts, each inhalation catching on the weight in the room. The whisper became many whispers, layering over one another, overlapping, building into a sound that was no longer soft but suffocating. It was as if every shadow in the room had a voice, each one leaning close enough for its breath to dampen the back of my neck. Something touched me. Not a hand, not anything I could see, but a cold current brushed my skin, sliding up my arm, pausing at my throat. My pulse thrashed against it. The sensation lingered, tightening slightly, testing the fragility of flesh. I forced myself to look down at the chalk circle. The symbols writhed. They didn't move as chalk should. They curled and bent, shifting into new shapes, twisting like worms beneath glass. The floor beneath them pulsed once, as if alive. Then came the sound. A knock, faint but deliberate, from below. Once, twice, thrice. The cadence of something announcing itself. The candles flared high, stretching flames that clawed at the ceiling before snapping short again. Darkness pressed in, and in that suffocating dark I felt it, eyes. Not one pair, but dozens all fixed on me. I could not see them, but their weight settled across my skin like the drag of spider legs. The whispering stopped all at once. Silence. Absolute, unnatural silence. And then breathing. Not mine. Slow, guttural, dragging through the air as though every breath scraped against bone. It was inside the circle. I swear it was inside, crouched low where my eyes could not adjust. A form darker than shadow, swelling upward with each inhalation. I wanted to scream, but the sound stuck in my chest. My vision blurred, candlelight smeared into streaks. I felt the weight of the house leaning inward, its wooden ribs groaning as though the structure itself bent to what I had called. Then it spoke, not in words, not in any tongue I could name, but directly into my head. The sound was wet, burrowing, 1,000 voices whispering at once, sliding across one another in tones that didn't belong to this world. My skull vibrated with it, each syllable thrumming like teeth chattering in the cold. I don't know what it said. I only know that every part of me recoiled, as though the meaning was too large, too poisonous to hold. The air throbbed with it. The circle shook. Something rose before me, a shape, swelling tall enough to blot the ceiling. It was featureless, but its presence was suffocating. The smell of decay coated my tongue, metallic and sour. My chest burned from shallow, frantic breaths. And then darkness. The candles snuffed themselves in unison. I don't remember what happened after. I woke sprawled on the floorboards, my throat raw as if something had pressed against it all night. The chalk circle was gone, scrubbed clean by hands I never used. The candles were upright, unburned, their wax solid as if untouched. The room was too quiet, unnaturally so. Outside, the marsh was still. Not even the wind moved through the grass. But I knew I had not dreamed it. The whispers still lingered in the marrow of my bones, echoes that no silence could erase. My skin smelled faintly of iron. The door has been opened. And every night since, I feel the breathing again, slow, guttural, waiting, patient. Not in the house, not in the marsh. Inside me. Binding. I did not find the house by chance. It was as though it had been waiting, tucked behind the skeletal trees and the forgotten road that led me into its grasp. Its windows gaped like eyes dulled by cataracts, its roof sagged under the weight of centuries, and its walls leaned inward as though conspiring to keep whatever dwelled inside from escaping. The air around it carried the heaviness of earth that had swallowed too many bones. Damp leaves clung to my boots as I crossed the yard, and the silence there was unlike any I had ever known. No birds, no wind shifting through the trees, only the dense stillness that pressed into the skin like water-filling lungs. I remember the key sticking in the lock, how the door resisted as though swollen by rot. When it finally gave, the scent inside hit me, a thick mixture of mold, wet stone, and the faint sweetness of something long dead. It clung to my throat, filling me with the kind of nausea that was more memory than sensation, as if the smell had been here before I was born, waiting to be recognized. The floors sagged beneath my weight, each step stirring dust motes into the pale shafts of light leaking through the curtains. I had not lit a candle yet, and already the shadows seemed eager, clinging to the corners and stretching thinly along the ceiling. The room I chose had no furniture, only the ghostly outlines where objects had once stood. Marks on the walls, impressions on the floor, as though the house itself remembered its own arrangement better than any living occupant. In the center of the wooden boards lay a pattern, scratched deep as though carved with something sharper than a knife. I traced the grooves with my fingertips, and a strange warmth pulsed against my skin. It was a circle, though not perfect, its edges crooked but deliberate. Symbols ringed its boundary, jagged shapes that hurt the eye to follow. They seemed to shiver when I blinked, rearranging themselves in ways I could not catch. I should have recoiled. I should have walked away. Instead, I felt the pull, an invisible cord winding around my ribs, drawing me toward it. Binding. That was the word that pressed itself into my mind. A tether, a knot, something held within these walls not by chance but by intent. The carvings were not decoration. They were restraint. When night came, I lit the candles. Their light was too small for the room, swallowed by the walls until all that remained were fragile halos trembling in the dark. I sat in the circle, the floor cool against my palms, the symbols beneath me radiating a faint heat that seemed to seep through the boards themselves. At first, it was nothing. Just the drip of wax, the soft hiss of flame. But the air thickened gradually, as though every breath carried weight. My ears rang faintly, a vibration that seemed to come from inside my skull rather than from the room. Then the house groaned, long, low, the sound of beams straining under an invisible burden. The scent shifted. Gone was the mold and dust. Instead came iron, sharp and bitter, curling into my nose until I tasted it on my tongue. Blood, not fresh but old, dried into wood and stirred awake by my presence. The symbols warmed further. My hand brushed against one, and a sudden jolt lanced through my body, sharp enough to lock my jaw and grind my teeth. Behind my eyes, for the briefest instant, I saw something, a shape too tall for the room, its outline flickering like smoke. Its head bent low, featureless, and yet I felt its stare sink into the marrow of me. When I gasped, the image vanished, but the warmth of the symbol did not. It pulsed steadily now, a heartbeat that was not my own, thudding up through the boards into my spine. The candles flickered as though in response. The flame bent sideways, drawn inward toward the circle's center. Shadows pooled around the edges of the room, thickening, growing almost liquid. They slid along the floor, creeping toward the circle as though testing the boundary. Each time the darkness reached the etched lines, it recoiled, sizzling faintly like steam hitting iron. That was when I understood. The circle was not meant for summoning. It was meant for containment. Something had been locked here long before me, something bound into the wood and stone of the house, and I had placed myself directly into its prison. The ringing in my ears grew louder until it became a chorus of whispers. Not words, not exactly, but sounds that pressed against my mind with the persistence of insects crawling beneath skin. They scraped at me, probing for entry, pulling at the seams of thought until I felt my memories bleed together. The smell grew sharper, rot mixed with a metallic tang, a cloying reminder that flesh was weak, permeable, and easily broken. The boards trembled beneath me. Once, twice, the rhythm of something shifting, trying to rise. My breath grew shallow, chest constricted by the pressure of an unseen hand. The circle glowed faintly now, its scratches radiating a dull red, as if hot coals had been pressed into the grooves. Then I heard it, breathing. Slow, deliberate, wet. It came from beneath me, seeping through the cracks, dragging the air down into itself. The heat of it rose against my legs, damp and foul, like an animal exhaling from a pit far below. I wanted to move, but my body refused. My limbs felt nailed to the floor, the weight of the room pressing down until I thought my bones would splinter. The shadows writhed, twisting themselves into forms that hinted at hands, at faces, but collapsed before they could fully become. The whispers sharpened into a single tone. It was not a word, but it carried meaning all the same: hunger. Not for food, for release. I realized then what had been done here. Someone long ago had bound this thing into the wood, stitched it into the house itself with blood and symbol and fire. They had carved its prison deep, and I had walked willingly into it. The circle was not protection. It was a seal, and I had disturbed it. The floor beneath me pulsed again, harder this time, a violent thud that rattled the candles in their holders. Wax spilled, flames flared, and for a moment the room was lit bright enough to see. The shadows peeled back like a curtain, revealing the shape crouched just beyond the circle. It was vast, limbs too long, bent wrong, stretching into corners that should not have contained them. Its head swayed slowly, a featureless void darker than any shadow. From within that void came the breathing, wet and ragged, dragging the air in and out as if each inhalation was stealing it directly from my lungs. The symbols flared white hot, the room stank of burning wood, and the creature shrank back, clawing at the air as if the light seared it. I felt the circle tighten, pressing me closer to its center, binding me as surely as it bound the thing outside. That was when the understanding sank into me, heavy and cruel. Binding requires balance. A tether on one side demands an anchor on the other. What had been locked here was not simply contained. It was tied to whoever carved the symbols, to whoever sat within, to me. The whispers pressed harder, bleeding into my skull until they drowned my thoughts. I tried to scream, but the sound bent back into me, swallowed by the weight of the thing that now coiled its essence through my veins. My heart thudded once, and I felt it echo in the creature's chest. My breath hitched, and its void mouth expanded as though gasping with me. We were linked. The candles extinguished. I woke hours later, sprawled on the boards, my body trembling as though I had run for miles. The circle was gone. Not erased, not faded, gone, as if the floor had swallowed it. The air was still, no scent of iron or rot, no trembling shadows. Only silence. But I feel it now, even outside the house. Its weight pressed against the back of my skull. Its breath rasping inside my chest. Each night when I close my eyes, I see its limbs stretching wider, its form unfurling across landscapes that should not exist. And each morning, I wake weaker, my veins aching as though something else pulses within them. The binding has not been broken. It has only shifted. And now, I am its prison.